Mike Israetel is one of the most successful personalities in the online fitness space. He's a competitive bodybuilder, he's got a very successful YouTube channel and fitness app, and I've learned a lot of things from him about personal training and lifting weights. Despite that, Mike has never really been my favorite person. I don't agree with his politics, and I think he's so chronically unfunny that I have literally cringed while watching some of his videos, but that's just personal taste. None of that actually discredits his professional work. You know what does discredit him though? Mike Israetel's PhD, the biggest academic sham in fitness? Mike Israetel, the situation is out of control. The roast of Mike Israetel's PhD dissertation, it was brutal. Mike Israetel what's really behind Mike Israetel's damage control in history. Mike Israetel got caught editing Mike Israetel's damage control, the hidden truth behind Mike Israetel defends the anatomy of a pseudoscientist Mike PhD. Dr. Mike Israetel just lost everything. It got worse. So apparently Mike Israetel is in incredibly hot water. After years about bragging about how smart he is, the internet now knows that his PhD dissertation is an absolute joke, filled with incorrect data, spelling mistakes, grammar errors, and in general such a messy presentation that the only reason he could have passed is if no one had read it. On top of that, Mike lied to his friends so they would defend him, and then went back on what he said, throwing his friends under the bus. To be honest, it's all very funny and deeply embarrassing, but that's not what this video is about. The reason I bring it up is because it's important context for the subject I want to go over, which is how ego will often take the place of curiosity. About a month ago, Mike Israetel had a conversation with actual Dr. Mike about pretty privilege and the science of being ugly. This is a conversation where Israetel makes the case that we are entering a new aesthetic revolution, and he enthusiastically makes the case that now with surgeries, ugly people can be attractive and live the lives that they've always wanted to live. Okay, so this interview is truly awful for two reasons. It's 3 hours long, jail, but second, and more importantly, it's a genuinely interesting conversation that is being controlled by an individual who thinks they're better than everyone else in the room. Despite the pitch being about pretty privilege and balancing the aesthetic scales of life, essentially, this conversation is about transhumanism, which is the philosophical movement that advocates for the enhancement of the human condition by making technologies that greatly improve longevity, condition, and well-being. And it's worth pointing out that technology here is not just computer chips, right? Technology is the application of scientific knowledge for practical purposes. So a wheelchair is a type of technology despite not having computer chips, same as an antidepressant. These two things allow people to extend their body and mind past their current limitations. So the core push and pull around transhumanism is the question of what is your authentic self? Someone who takes antidepressants would probably tell you that they feel like more of themselves as they integrate this technology into their life. They do not identify as someone who is always sad and uninspired. It is their view that the technology has transformed them into their more authentic self. And at the heart of all of that, we have the question, is self-creation part of the human experience? Well, spoilers, we're not going to answer any of those questions today because this video is about Mike Israetel, and I can say for certain he doesn't have any f***ing idea. My take is that pretty privilege is a lot like lying about how great your PhD is. It can get people interested in you, it can get your foot in the door, people might be more willing to trust you, but sooner or later, you have to present something of substance. Otherwise, people are going to find out that you actually have nothing to contribute.
There's a problem in gyms across America of males, on average, some, not all, being too egotistical and too prideful.
What's truly genius about this interview is that Mike is presenting his argument to Dr. Mike, a man who arguably only has a career online because of his pretty face. And this is true, by the way. A photo of Dr. Mike went viral because he's hot. He was invited on the Ellen show, but for some reason he got bumped, and because of that, he made a YouTube video instead, and the rest is history. Presenting the argument that pretty people have it easier in front of this man is going to immediately put him on the defensive. And as a bonus, everything Dr. Mike says can be dismissed because look at him. How is he possibly going to know how the uggos live? I'm not going to play too many clips from this interview because I respect you, but I think the entire interview can be summed up with this clip.
You know the whole Lizzo situation?
What's the whole Lizzo situation?
So like there's a real fun kind of inside joke that, you know, your hot girlfriends are like, oh my God, Lizzo's so gorgeous. And then you're like, you look like Lizzo. And they're like, what the fuck do you mean I look like Lizzo? They don't take it well. And like, I thought you said she was gorgeous. Like, I meant like, you know what I mean? Just shut up. And they don't want the conversation because even Lizzo wants to look like Scarlett Johansson.
So essentially the thesis here is that aesthetics matter and profoundly affect your life. The thing is, That's not a hot take, but Israetel needs it to be a hot take in order to get attention. So at the end, he tacks on, if you don't agree, you're lying. Whether you're on board with that or not, I think we can all agree that that's a much more specific, harder point to defend. But if someone tries to challenge him like Dr. Mike does in this video, Israetel gets to walk the statement back and say, hey, people have aesthetic preferences. That's fact. I can't fix America, which is of course a super cowardly way to discuss any topic. However, it probably would have worked. Where Mike Israetel really f***s up is when he shows his aggressive bias by trying to state statistics.
If we had, let's say, some knowledge and we say, oh, this child is going to grow up 5'6" versus 6. We're not going to be like, oh my God, by all means, get him to 6 because that's going to change his life.
It will, though.
But that's the question. Will it?
Yeah.
Or are you studying after the fact of judging it and putting this out into the world?
Oh, I'm not judging it. Women that say yes or no when you ask them on dates judge it. And you can see this on OkCupid studies and all that stuff. You don't have to tell a 5'6" kid, like, hey kid, you're not a real short end of the stick, literally, a little bit. You have to say that. That's toxic. It promotes the wrong kind of attitude. But if he was like, hey, is me being taller going to make me more likely to girls that I like say yes to me when I ask them out on dates? Categorically, the answer is yes. And if you don't tell them that, you are foisting upon them a great illusion that does them no good.
When this statistic was dropped, the two men were talking about living fulfilling lives. Not body count, not long marriages. Getting a date confirmed on OkCupid is not the same as living a fulfilling life. It's easy to equate these things though, because when we hear someone going on a lot of dates, we imagine someone who's courting a lot of people, maybe even getting lucky in the meantime. But the truth is, you can be an incredibly successful socialite and not go on dates. You can also get laid and not go on dates. Mike is cherry-picking data that makes you feel like he's right. He's taking a statement that everyone knows is true, tall people have easier times finding dates, and he's linking that with his unproven bias. Tall people have easier lives. But even going back to his point about Lizzo, like what's the actual scenario here? Do I look like Lizzo and live my normal life? Do I have the life and career of Lizzo? What if I look like myself, but I have the resources and the glam team that Lizzo has? These wildly change the outcome of the scenario that Mike brings up as truth. And you can't just be so lazy that you simplify all of life into a few statistics to prove to everyone in the room that you're the smartest one. I'm gonna cut right to the core of the problem here. Mike Israetel doesn't watch Love Island. Because if he watched Love Island, he would know about the Love Island principle. This is a premise that states that there will always be an uggo in the room. Let me explain. Individually, every single one of these cast members is a smoke show, 10 out of 10, undeniable hottie. However, when you put them all together, someone is going to stand out as the weakest link. Is that fair? No, but that's how the brain works. And I think it's really funny that Mike thinks there can ever be an even level playing field. It makes me think about how a lot of people think having extra skin is unattractive. But in my mind, the two most common reasons someone would have extra skin is if they were popping out a baby or if they lost a ton of weight. Two things that should be celebrated. Yet these people are aesthetically punished for the crime of obeying the laws of nature. The mindset should not be, you have extra skin, well, isn't it great that you can get surgery to fix that? Instead, it should be an internalized realization of respect, because I guarantee the things that these people went through were not easy. Also, don't get it twisted. If you want to change your body in any way, I think that's great. But if you're getting surgery so that other people will finally give you value, you're giving power to those judgments. And those same judgmental people will always find a new way to discredit you.
You're a fraud, Helen. You're a walking lie, and I can see right through you.
Now it's time to talk about the true elephant in the room, because I don't know if any of you've noticed, but Mike Israetel is quite the uggo himself. He's got a weird shape, a weird face, he's short as hell, and bald. In the grand scheme of aesthetic lotteries, he didn't just lose, he's getting kicked out of the casino. And I'm sure Mike, with his bluntness and honesty about people's looks, would agree with me. So if all of those things are true about Mike, how is he so successful, so commanding, so respected, and so popular? If his answer is he rose above the haters and losers, then his whole argument goes down the drain. But if his argument is, I'm actually not happy. Do we really think some plastic surgery to make him gorgeous is gonna change any of that? He's married, he's got millions of dollars, he's got a huge platform where he gets to say whatever he wants. Is his problem that he's aesthetically not at the top of the list, or is his problem that he's too busy obsessing over aesthetics? I'm not saying looks don't matter. In fact, they matter a great deal. And I actually think this comment below Dr. Mike's and Mike's interview sums up the frustrations perfectly. As a kid, I was fat, I dressed like a tomboy, and had terrible acne. In my college years, I started wearing makeup, lost a lot of weight, and wore clothes that fit my body better. The results were significantly more attention from men and people treating you nicer overall. I attribute landing my first job out of college to my looks because my manager told me my boss was biased towards prettier people. This is the part of pretty privilege that hotties love to dismiss because it's the thing that they never had to deal with. All throughout high school, I was closeted. I know how hard it is to grow up being told you're not enough. But let's be real. This comment is kind of just someone learning to take care of themselves. Found clothes that fit, cleared up their acne, lost a little bit of weight. These are all things that come with just a little bit of self-love. And I find it interesting that this comment is void of any personal reflection. Did not having acne improve your confidence? Did better fitting clothes help you be more outgoing? Or was it the fact that you grew up, started washing your face, and had more goals and interests? I'm sure it's a mix of those things. And that's what makes Mike's point of view really, really silly. Some of you people internalize the trauma you received on the playground and make that your entire personality. But you're not Frankenstein's monster. Life can get really, really rough. People can be harsh, but your friend group, your community, the people that really, really get you, they're out there. Do not sit back and let a millionaire convince you to wallow in suffering. And when a man like this says that Lizzo's not attractive, I think the best thing to do is just close the laptop. You know what I'm saying? Brian Johnson is a venture capitalist and entrepreneur. He's a millionaire that made most of his money by taking his business Braintree, a company specializing in web payment systems, merging that with Venmo, and in 2013 selling the combined entity to PayPal for $800 million. And that's all fun and good. However, he's most known for his new life's goal, which is to live forever. In 2021, Johnson went viral for deciding to undergo a series of 6 monthly 1-liter plasma transfusions, with his son being one of the donors. His Wikipedia page says that he did not repeat this endeavor because of the, quote, lack of results. So, look, I can sit here and say that this is a 48-year-old man who looks like a 48-year-old man. I can say that over the last 10 years, it looks like he aged 20. I can roast him for the fact that he's chosen the one endeavor in life that will 100% end in failure, but I'm not going to do that. Because a lot of people like this man, and I understand why. From the outside looking in, he's a millionaire who's funding science and discovery. If you look at his comment sections, most people know that he's not going to live forever, but they do like that he's interested in science and doing something. And who knows, that something could lead to another something that could be a discovery that actually helps people. Personally, I find it an interesting time in history to be throwing spaghetti at the proverbial anti-aging wall, but that's what Brian wants to do with his cash, and in his way, he's making a difference. Or at least that's what he says on the podcasts.
I live in LA as well. So I have a air measurement device in every room of my house. So you're right, like LA air quality is typically around the 60 mark, which is like kind of bad. But in my house, it's perfect. It's 0. So yeah, I wish LA had better air quality. I love LA for so many reasons. I really wish the air quality was better. But yeah, I agree with you. It is a significant health threat. And it's not a good idea to have a lot of exposure to bad air.
How do we go about purifying air inside of our homes? Obviously, we can't control the air in the city we live in.
We can't control the quality of the air. Interesting take. Wrong, but still interesting. This is really frustrating because he's properly identified the problem. The fact that air quality in LA is terrible. I live here, that's true. But instead of trying to change that or creating funding for studying new types of renewable resources, Brian is advocating for buying a product. And look, I get it. Pushing up against the fossil fuel industry is dangerous and difficult, and it requires you to bump up against powerful men that make a lot of money from the norms. It is so much easier to solve the problem for yourself by plugging in products that use energy from the coal that we burn and pollute the air more. I'll tell you, I was actually going to cut this part because California is actually pretty good about being reliant on its renewable resources. After doing some research, I found out that what's far more damaging to the air quality in LA are cars and private jets, which are two things that Brian Johnson owns. So forgive me for not buying a ticket to this pathetic show. And this is the part of the video where, unfortunately, we have to talk about the Real Housewives. I'm sorry. For years, I have masked my passion for the show with the cowardly conceit that it was just wrestling for gays. You know, characters in costumes with their storylines and character arcs battling it out in an arena.
Receipts, proof, timeline, screenshots, everything.
And don't get me wrong, that's still true, but the Real Housewives franchise is a seminal piece of art that truly reveals the frailty of the human condition. What makes housewives different than just a regular rich person is their obvious desperation. Technically, housewives have everything, but they are deeply saddened by the lack of their own accomplishments. The franchise of Housewives is not just a parade of products and lifestyles like people believe it is a documented journey of these women fighting to be their own person. And if I'm gonna be blunt, usually failing. From Bethany Frankel's rise with her skinny girl brand to her inevitable transformation into anorexic Skeletor, the Countess Luann's original obsession with being classy and dignified, to her drunken showdown with an unsuspecting Bush. Jen Shah needed to be the center of every conversation, only for that to backfire when she pled guilty and was sent to prison for 6.5 years for wire fraud. And Taylor Armstrong, the woman from this meme, spends an entire season trying to show the world how lovely her life is, including spending $50,000 on a birthday party for her 4-year-old daughter, only to have it all cave in when the girls start asking questions about her abusive husband. This cat was edited into a screenshot of an episode where Taylor was crashing out because the women were starting to ask questions and she did not want this part of her life to be public. Housewives is not about showing off extravagance. It's about using extravagance to cover up the piece of you that is truly missing. So when I say Brian Johnson is a housewife, it's not because he's rich and it's not because he grew up Mormon, although both of those are strong contenders for getting him on the show. It's because I don't see a man who's confident and comfortable. I see a man who needs to put on a show to make himself feel better about his place in the world. His Never Die business is not a project that seeks to help all people. It's a monument to one man's delusion and his need to take the most basic concepts like getting a lot of sleep makes you healthier and take credit for them so he can sleep well at night, believing that he's made a profound difference. Don't get me wrong, I don't believe that having a lot of money and not using it for the most precise utilitarian extreme makes someone a bad person. But Brian Johnson and his aspirations to never die are silly and should be taken equally as seriously as some dumb bitch running through traffic.
Running in New York City is probably one of the most exhilarating things you could ever do. It's like the ultimate experience of being in New York is like running in traffic.
And this is the end game in constantly operating in a mode where you have to prove that you're valid to other people. Whether it's Housewives, Brian Johnson, or Mike Israetel, their egos extend past their ability to be useful, ironically, because they probably don't believe they're useful. So thank God, at the very least, these women can put on a show.
Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
One of my dream interviews is to put Mike Israetel and Jordan Peterson in a room together and just listen to them talk. Because both of them want to be the smartest in their field, but don't have a lot of interest in engaging with their field. I think it would be genuinely fascinating to see what they agree on and what they think of each other. If you don't already know, Jordan Peterson is a psychologist, author, and media commentator who really hit it big in 2016 with his book 12 Rules for Life. Peterson's goal with the book was to achieve objectivity, but what it ended up being is more of a conservative self-help book. But in 2016, his words really resonated with some young men because he was giving advice like clean your room with a twist of feminism is responsible for destroying the West. And that really hits if you're a young man who from a very young age has been told that the world is yours to conquer, and then you wake up one day with a shitty job, back knee, and no bitches. I read his second book, Beyond Order, because I think it's important to understand how Jordan Peterson communicates with his audience. But there isn't much here. I think the secret sauce is that Jordan never really takes any definitive stances. He just circles around a subject, implying certain things, and waits for his audience to catch the vibe. And gosh, who does that sound like?
Because even Lizzo wants to look like Scarlett Johansson.
This is not a good way to communicate if you're trying to scientifically prove something. However, it's a very good way to communicate if you're trying to lead people to a conclusion that might be a little more controversial, like when Peterson claimed that white privilege doesn't exist. So I don't recommend this thing, and I want to be clear about that because I'm about to give Peterson some compliments. In this glorified self-help book, Peterson uses phenomenology to help prove his points. Phenomenology is the study of the structures of experience itself. In simpler terms, it's about focusing on the value of your feelings. A perfect example is this Pokemon card in my phone case. Scientifically, this is some thin piece of cardboard with some ink on it. But emotionally, this could remind you of your childhood. It could remind you of a memory with others. It can even change in monetary value depending on how much you know about it. Your experience of this card is shaped by your values and your feelings, and that is what gives it meaning. Otherwise, it's just a piece of cardboard I found on the ground while walking my dog. In other words, we are always telling ourselves a story. I don't think that's very far off, and it explains why Jordan Peterson often leans into the self-help genre. Beyond Order has some decent chapters, stuff like embracing responsibility for one's life, actively engaging with uncertainty and chaos, but my favorite is rule number 2. Imagine who you could be and aim single-mindedly at that. Everyone has a sense, I believe, that there is more to them that they have yet allowed to be realized. That potential is often obscured by poor health, misfortune, or the general tragedies and mishaps of life, but it can also be hidden by the unwillingness to take full advantage of the opportunities that life offers, abetted by regrettable errors of all sorts, including failures of discipline, faith, imagination, and commitment. As a personal trainer, I think this is great advice. I am always telling people to write out their goals, no matter how big or small, and then map out in reverse exactly how you're gonna reach that goal. It's a fantastic way of helping to imagine a version of yourself that is more successful. By reframing the way you see your past and your future, you can experience yourself in a much different light. But my compliments to Jordan Peterson end there because he seems to have fallen into the same trap that he constantly diagnoses in others. In a video he made bemoaning how unfair it was that he was kicked off of Twitter, he sits alone in a room and goes on and on about his own cultural relevance, and it's so awkward. And he recently made himself look really foolish by going in front of a group of kids who have actually done the reading. The narratives we use to shape our identity are all fun and good until the stories we tell ourselves go a little too far. Something Peterson and Israetel have in common is that they can be very fast and loose with their facts. Peterson has claimed in the past that 1 in 10 boys will be feminine and 1 in 10 girls will be masculine. And source? And we talked about Mike doing this earlier. I understand the vibe of their opinions, but these are stories they are telling to construct feelings. It's not reality. Again, this is something you do to prove you're right, not something you do when you want to have a vulnerable conversation about life. If you spend too much time constructing narratives about what you deserve and how much better you are compared to others, there's no space to learn anything, which makes it so ironic that people like Mike says stuff like this.
You are presuming you know more than me about the thing I'm one of the top experts in the world in, and also the thing I'm literally involved in myself. So whatever ideas you have about how I can improve, just right off.
In this entire interview, Mike does what Peterson loves to do in their own cowardly way. They construct a community of people, cast them aside, and say, you are too stupid to understand this. You could never possibly understand. I think a career of reading internet comments about his body and his aesthetic has traumatized him in a way that he doesn't even realize. I believe that he is incapable of looking in the mirror and not seeing what other people say about him. And as real as that can feel, it doesn't have to be a reality. I hope he takes the time he's taking off now with this super embarrassing career blunder to step back and breathe and maybe see the world for what it really is, which is an unfair piece of rock floating through the sky filled with billions of meat sacks that are just trying to not hate themselves. But anyway, that's all I got. I weaved in and out of a lot of topics today, and for a lot of them, I'm just scratching the surface. Finding out who you are and where you fit into the world is a never-ending process, and there are no definitive answers, which means that there's always something new to discover, and there's always something new to learn. And honestly, I don't think I want Mike to watch this because he does scare me quite a bit, but I would like to know what everyone else thinks. So like and subscribe, comment down below, and I will see ya next time. Vegas!
We did it.